All right, Harmless Dave back again for more fun here at the Real Media Observer. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, people. We're showing a little improvement when it comes to subscribers. Before I switched over, changed everything again, we had a very stagnant growth pattern. In fact, we were losing subs. Now we are starting to gain them almost on a daily basis. So I want to thank everybody for subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to hit the bell for notifications on new videos. And Patreon, you can support me for just $1 a month over on Patreon. Okay, so another truth bomb. No pun intended here, although bombs are falling in Ukraine. You won't hear about what's actually happening in Ukraine. Here is a statement from the Ministry of Defense in the Russian Federation. Ukraine's Air Force, their air defenses almost completely destroyed. Navy, I'm sorry, people. Am I taking pleasure in this? A little bit, because the Western media is just so ridiculous. So let me finish. Navy has ceased to exist, according again to the Russian Ministry of Defense. Ukraine's air and air defense forces have been almost completely destroyed, and the country's Navy has effectively ceased to exist, according to Sergei Rutskoy, who is the General Staff Main Operational Directorate Chief. That is his title. The campaign to demilitarize Ukraine is taking place via precision strikes. That's against military infrastructure, areas of deployment of formations of troops, as well as airfields, command posts, arsenals, and depots containing weapons and equipment, plus battles between Ukrainian and Russian forces, Rutskoy said in a briefing earlier today. At present, the Ukrainian Air Force and the system of air defenses have been almost completely destroyed. Hence the please save our skies, meaning you're going to have to come and help us because our Air Force is, who's going to go up in the air against Russia? Seriously? See, this is what even before this began, I'm like, you're really going to do this, huh? You're really, you're going to go against Russia, huh? Oh, okay, Russia, sure. This is just the dumbest and most preventable thing. I'll tell you this, the what is it? The terms that Russia has for ceasefire, they should have been like agreed to 2 weeks ago. But here we are. And you got Biden doing his little NATO puppet dance, and it's going nowhere. All those guys look ridiculous. None of them want to be responsible for being a catalyst for World War III. I mean, technically we're there, but it's the escalation that I think we have to really worry about. So Rutskoy warned that Russia would not leave unattended any attempts to supply Kiev, not Kyiv, Kiev with new aircraft and air defense system, and warned NATO against the implementation of a no-fly zone. I was going to say low-fly zone, but it's no-fly zone. Individual member states of the North Atlantic Alliance are proposing the closure of airspace over Ukraine. I draw your attention to the fact that the armed forces of the Russian Federation, listen to this, will immediately respond to such attempts in an appropriate manner, Rutskoy says. All right, so is this like a threat? Are the Russians threatening to actually counter the interference of the airspace? And it's like the normal people among us, and there are not too many of them, are saying things like, don't do this. Why do you keep doing this? And then you got the rhetoric on both the right and the left, which scares the crap out of me, because when they start agreeing on stuff, That's when I know it's really bad. And you got like, I don't know, the Ben Shapiro type over here. And I don't know, I haven't been listening to him, so I don't know what he's actually saying. Let's say Sean Hannity, who's just so invested in the Bush doctrine because he still thinks that we can find the weapons of mass destruction. They might actually be in Ukraine. That's probably where Saddam hid them before, we couldn't find them. Weapons in Ukraine. That's where they are. And now Zelensky is now using these weapons to, so he's using the weapons that Saddam had to fight the Russians. See how that works? Yeah, that's, you know what? Crazier and dumber things have happened. But the point is, Sean Hannity and this neocon, and by the way, it's Morning Joe, it's all of these people who go on TV and just think that we need to be the global superpower and to put everybody in their place. And at the very least, even if you don't understand this conflict, at the very least, it's mind your own bleeping business. Mind your own business. It used to be on the currency a long time ago. So yeah, this is pretty crazy stuff. So Ukraine's armed forces have suffered losses amounting to 30,000 people. So the military has lost 30,000 people, 14,000 were killed, 16,000 injured. These losses have affected all 24 groupings of the ground units which existed before the operation began. Now, Russia's been looking at this for 8 years, so they know this entire situation backwards and forwards, right? And so it's kind of odd that the Western media reports that, hey, this is taking way longer. They're like wondering, why this is taking longer? Because these guys, yeah, they're definitely killing service people, but they're trying to do this surgically. And every time you do it like this, you do it surgically, it takes longer and you lose more of your own troops in doing it that way. And it's actually more humanitarian to do it that way, but it's also just more dangerous in general for everybody. So this is taking longer than it could take because Russia could just unleash a shock and awe campaign, much like the US did. And, it was then branded on merchandise after that. Look, I want this to end as quickly as possible because the people who are losing are the civilians in all of these places, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, and the United States, who are suffering economic tragedy. And that economic tragedy will filter into the rest of the European countries who are now all gung-ho with NATO and have signed on to more sanctions, which are doing absolutely nothing to Russia. Like Russia was just going to stop. Okay, we're not going to allow you guys to operate McDonald's or Starbucks. Ooh, I think Russia announced a plan to do their own McDonald's where the logo is sideways or something. It's like a B instead of an M. I saw a picture of it and I just started laughing. I'm like, this is great. Maybe M for Moscow, selling hamburgers. I mean, they couldn't do any worse than the crap that they serve at McDonald's. So, who cares, right? Their citizens are probably like, good. We didn't need the food poisoning. We didn't need the GMO food being sold in large quantities to our population. So the grouping of Ukrainian forces fighting in the Donbass against Donetsk and Lugansk people's militias has lost more than 7,000 troops. So the militias, this is why the Second Amendment is a good thing here in the United States, have taken out 7,000 troops, accounting for over a quarter of its total strength. According to Rutskoy, the Russian military has prevented the replenishment of these forces, taking control of railway junctions and key roads, the supply of missiles and ammunition. They're taking missiles. Fuel and food, it's almost completely gone. He said, with remaining stockpiles of weapons and fuel in the relevant areas being destroyed in strikes. Wow. Look, in Russia, almost 80% of the people approve of Vladimir Putin. The West doesn't get this. They don't get it. Whether you like the type of government that Russia has or not, that's irrelevant to this conversation. They believe, the Russians believe they're righting a wrong, and the West believes this is an unprovoked attack on democracy. Democracy in Ukraine. Democracy in Ukraine is about as strong as democracy in America right now. This is what is completely mind-blowing, is that we don't have American democracy, but yet we're going to go around the world and worry about democracy in other places. At the very least, without any information, just knowing that we are not exporting democracy because we don't have it ourselves. If you don't have a good, clean election, for instance, or if you aren't getting all the information about certain topics when it comes to choices for your own well-being, your own health, right? If you're not getting those choices, then you really don't have a democracy. Because again, you don't have informed consent and you can't make a good decision. And people are just telling you what to do and saying it's good for you, just do it and shut up. So when the media comes out with stories about Russia, Ukraine, it's just listen to what we say, don't question it, and shut up. There are no Azov battalions in Ukraine. That doesn't exist. I don't know who's coming up with that stuff. And, you know, every country has their fringe groups, right? So they'll acknowledge it, but they don't acknowledge that these people are in positions of power in Ukraine, which is far different from some little gaggle of racist losers in South Carolina, right? This is something I think that's just, I don't know, it's way different than that. And to kind of conflate those two things is really just disingenuous, and it creates a bit of madness in your own mind. At least it has for me. But in any event, again, the headline of this story, I'll reiterate it briefly because it is a good headline. And yes, I am taking a little pleasure in this, and I shouldn't. Ukraine's Air Force and air defenses almost completely destroyed. Navy has ceased to exist. So are U.S. warships closing in on this territory? Are they getting closer by the day? And are we going to respond in a more forceful way? Are we going to start patrolling the skies above Ukraine? Because if we do, it's duck and cover time, people, and that ain't going to do anything for you. Unless you've got a fallout shelter where you live, and in which case you can't come out. So you better have food for the next 10 years or so down there. This is just absolutely insane. And I can't believe our government is just going down this path and we don't care. We're just going to do it. We're full steam ahead, and get your little Ukrainian flag out, wave it around, because that's what everybody does. That's the new thing to support. Change your profile picture. Yay. Anyway, that's my video on the topic. Again, don't forget to help me out over on Patreon. It's $1 a month, and subscribe to the channel if you can. And I'm very thankful for all the new subscribers over here. And we can chat over on Patreon. If you are a new patron, I'd be glad to talk to you about this and many other topics as time permits. Until later, I'm Dave, and I'll see you then.